Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team. Let's go take a look.
Hey everybody, it's Josh Rubin here in New York City with Douglas Elliman, and today is Wednesday, May 15th. Time is flying. Wanted to introduce you to my friends Jason and Lindsay from Seattle Every Door Real Estate. What's going on out in Seattle today, guys?
Rain. No, I'm kidding. But I feel really guilty. Those intro shots are classic dated real estate broker headshots.
Yeah, for sure. You also picked us at our peak weight, or at least me.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's your fighting weight, and I guess you've you slimmed down to the featherweight fighting class, but I'm sure you'd still take it a full 12 rounds. So what's going on out in Seattle? I mean, I was just seeing something in the New York Post today about some of these markets that were on fire during the pandemic are starting to see a little bit of softening. A lot of them are sort of the secondary home markets like upstate New York, Elmira, New York, saw double-digit softening. Are you seeing markets that are sort of a little bit more equal weighted recently?
Sort of. I would say that units sold, so number of closings as the measuring point, is down almost 40% from the highs in 21. Pricing, though, has I mean, we lost a lot of the appreciation we saw in the early part of 22, which was like a dark or vertical line. But some of that's come back as well. We've got multiple offers on kind of what I would call like A+ properties, and down into kind of that B range. But there's just less units moving, and it's a natural effect of whole bunch of people are enjoying wildly low rates and are not really willing to give those up, whether they need to upsize or downsize or make the kind of normal life moves that people make. What we're seeing right now is it's only the sellers that have to move that are selling their properties, or folks that feel really, really secure in their job and have a lot of expendable income and really just heavily want to make one of those upsize or downsize moves. Obviously, relo and divorce and death and estate stuff is a pretty big chunk of the market. The real difference between now and 21 is simply the number of transactions that are occurring.
Yeah, so it sounds like a market that's pretty similar to the one that we're in here in New York, which is that volumes are off a little bit, but prices are relatively stable. And what you're describing is what I would anticipate for the second half of this year, which is not just here in New York, but probably most places as we get closer to the election, which is that transactions are going to be fueled by a specific need, whether it be a corporate relocation or, death, divorce, that type of thing. And so, over the last 4 years, a lot of these markets have seen tremendous growth. A lot of interest has picked up in places like, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and, these sort of out of the way places that you wouldn't really expect. And people didn't just buy second homes. They literally decided to say, to hell with this. I'm out of here. I'm going to go out and fish for the rest of my career. I could work remotely. We're seeing a lot of companies saying, hey guys, not so fast. If you want to keep your job, we're going to mandate that you be in the office at least, 3 to 4, in some cases 5 days a week, especially in finance jobs. I'm meeting a client today, a past client, who's looking to do a 1031. He's at Goldman Sachs, partner there, and he's in the office every day. So a lot of these markets are seeing sort of a reverse migration that, picked up quite a bit. And now they're seeing people saying, oh, you know what, on second thought, I got to be back out in Seattle. So are you seeing anybody who moved out of Seattle during the pandemic and now they're saying, you know what, I actually didn't like Florida or Dallas or wherever they might have gone?
I can't think of a specific instance of that. We've seen our kind of big employers really struggle with the return to work call, whether it's Amazon or Microsoft, which are two of the big ones in our market. they have false started, hey, we're coming back to the office 3, 4, 5 times now, and then delayed that decision, and then set a new parameter and gauged feedback and delayed that decision again. They're back in office to some degree, definitely not to the degree they were, pre-COVID. But no, I haven't seen as much kind of reloading back into the area after a move away yet.
I think that's going to be delayed somewhat. It's going to happen. They did a poll about buyers moving back in early 2023, and something like 70 or 80% of people regretted moving out to where they moved out during COVID. So I think it's just a matter of time before they decide to move back. They're just waiting for rates to drop. They don't want to take a hit.
Right. I'm doing a deal now down in Tribeca where in 2018, now granted this is pre-COVID, but in 2018, these people bought this particular property for $9 million, and they're selling it today for 20% less. So we're doing the deal for 7.3. So you're saying, they don't want to take a hit. Well, I have news for all of our viewers out there, which is to say that now is a great opportunity as a buyer to take advantage of the properties that are on the market, because those are serious sellers who realize that we want to move, we want to do a deal. So, let's figure out what it's worth and get the deal done. Whereas I think if you wait until the other side of the election, you're likely to see clear skies and proverbial birds chirping. And you're going to see a lot of people who waited the last 1 to 2 years, as last year the rates went up. This year rates remained elevated. Plus we have the election cycle coming up. And so that's all going to be behind us. So I think everybody's going to be trying to get back into the pool at the same time in the first quarter, second quarter of 25. What are your thoughts on that?
I assume that's a condo you're talking about.
Well, in this case, yes, it's an apartment here in the city.
Yeah, that is a sort of a similar experience with the condo market here. I don't really work at that $9 million price point. It's rare around here.
Yeah.
But there's people that definitely bought in 18, like 17, 18, 19, the condo market was on fire.
Yeah.
And those people that bought then, they couldn't sell them for what they bought today. But houses, on the other hand, if you bought a house in 18, it's basically double.
Huh. So that's interesting. So you saw sort of the condo market was absolutely on fire, 16 to 18, maybe 19, and then, but the housing market has doubled since then. The condo market has not done as well. Not
at all. It's stayed about flat for the most part. There's a crane on every corner in the city in Seattle at one point. It was incredible the amount of development was happening. There's still a ton of development downtown, which is sort of odd to me, but there's got to be a large number of buildings sitting empty.
Yeah. And so you guys kind of came from this business from an interesting angle. How did you get your start?
It's great. Jason and I met working at Zillow, actually. So we were selling advertising for a time period there, and then started a team within Zillow called Revenue Labs that was focused on monetizing Zillow's products in a different way. And out of that group was born, their concierge service that was handling calls on the front end before they touched a real estate agent or a broker, as well as their flex program. So the idea of charging a success fee rather than charging upfront for leads. But through those experiences, we obviously got a lot of exposure to large teams all around the country, the higher performer boutique brokerages and top performing teams, and sort of watched what they did from a business perspective. And of course, like all things, you look at it from the outside and it looks extremely simple. And gosh, we can go and do that. And so we did and started brokering real estate nights and weekends to see what it was all about. And once we felt like we had a decent handle on the contractual side of things, stepped out of production and started finding agents that were looking for sort of a different way to do real estate. And I'll let you talk about the different way to do it.
Well, I mean, we were, they say that necessity is the mother of invention, right? I mean, we were sort of consumed with our full-time jobs at Zillow, I guess.
Yeah.
We had to find different ways to do business, and we ended up becoming more of a centralized services company, where, an agent's focus would be just working with the client, convincing buyers and sellers they were the right person to work with, and all the minutia, contract writing, transaction management, and things of that sort. Marketing fell to a centralized location, our command center, if you will. And that sort of just took off, and agents love the freedom of not having to deal with any of that stuff in their business. Like, they want to build the relationship. They want to be able to negotiate. They want to do deals, but all the stuff that comes along with real estate that doesn't produce revenue, find someone really good to do it for me, and I'll like that. So it sort of stuck.
The number of hats that a real estate agent or broker wears is insane, right? Like, you are a graphic designer one minute and a operations person, doing paperwork and scheduling a sign install in our market anyway. And then the next minute you're writing a contract, and all of that's happening while you're also trying to provide incredible service to your client. And I don't think that anyone can do all of those things to the degree that a consumer deserves. And so the focus really is, okay, let's take all that revenue producing activity and really make that the broker's primary focus, and take all of that non-revenue producing stuff, putting the right number in the right box on a contract, or calling the post company to come and install a sign, or designing your flyer for your open house this weekend. None of that stuff is the stuff that provides incredible service to a consumer. And so centralizing that and giving it to someone that does it all day, every day. Our operations team, which is 10 people behind the scenes, they don't interact with consumers, but they'll write 15 or 20 offers in a day. They're very, very good at that. And it's all dictated by the broker. The broker knows what's in the contract, and they QC it before it goes in front of their client. But it really gives them the ability to work from a phone and only a phone while they're out providing great service to their clients.
Yeah, it's interesting. Early in my career, I realized that I needed to find support to do the things that are not directly correlated to revenue producing activities. And revenue producing activities in our business are following up with people, having conversations, meeting people, showing property, discussing selling property, and just that, right? So anything that does not drive those specific activities, I needed to offload onto someone else. And so that's when I started to hire somebody who was going to be my operations manager. I remember specifically helping a client of mine with her first purchase. Her mother was helping her, and really great young woman. And I'm still friends with her today, and I've gone on to help her with 3 or 4 other transactions. She's turned into a great referral source for me. But here it was Friday night at 10 o'clock. I should have been home with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife of 20 some years. But I was sitting on the floor, literally sitting on the floor of my office, surrounded by paperwork for her co-op application for her purchase. And I was literally at wit's end. And I knew that I had to get it done, but that was the only opportunity that I had to do it, because I was participating in these revenue driving activities during the course of the day. So I got to work on this. I grabbed a quick bite, 7 o'clock at night, started making copies, started printing things out, assembling all these documents. And I realized this is no way to live. And so from that point, I then sort of started delegating things onto other people. And it took me a good, from that point, 5+ years to figure out, what are the right seats, not even who are the right people for these seats, but who are the right seats for the team in order to be as successful as I am. And a lot of agents don't realize that. like you guys at Zillow, you were looking at your customers that you were selling advertising space to and say, geez, this couldn't be that difficult. And then nights and weekends, you were trying to figure it out, and you realized that you had to centralize all the non-revenue producing activities so that you could free up either yourselves or the agents to go out and show homes, essentially, and meet with people. The less that you do that is the less revenue that you're going to have. And so if you have marketing, if you have ops, if you have transaction coordination sort of centralized, that's really how you're going to win.
I mean, you walk down the path that a really successful broker does, which is they start to do business and they wear all the hats, and then they start to offload them. And what we found is that the process that you went through that you described taking 5 years, it never really stopped, right? There's always going to be turnover in your operations team. There's always going to be turnover in your marketing folks. You're always going to be having to come back and train the next person and deal with their payroll and their vacations and what if they're out sick and all of those things. And so you can go and do that, and it's a pretty long and tough path as you've experienced, or you can come to a place like this and plug in and have it from day one, right? We have folks that have never sold a house that have more leverage than anybody when they walk in the door here. And then we have agents that are, large producers for our market, say 10 or 15 million, that join our brokerage because they don't want to manage all that stuff, or they don't want to figure out what the path is to get from their $10 million annual production to 20 through hiring a bunch of people and going through the kind of trials and tribulations that involves. It's all here and it's built. You just get to plug into it and start focusing on those things, as you described, that drive revenue for your business.
And also, obviously, there's a lot of agents that are doing 10 or 15 million a year in volume, which is a good number of business, very respectable amount of business, that just can't see it doing any other way. They need to wear those hats. They're stuck in that cycle of spending all that time on stuff that doesn't benefit them. That you just can't logic into realizing that there's a better way to do real estate and you can have a life.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, that because you came from Zillow, and the thing about Zillow is that they're constantly sort of retooling and refining their process, at least on the front end, for the customer in terms of, different tweaks to the websites and where did this go and where did that go, and they're moving things around. It's all still there. You just have to kind of relearn it and figure out how to get access to it. And then for the agents and on the agent portal or platform, they're also retooling things. You mentioned rolling out the Flex system and how you did that with the labs department, and you kind of developed this new way of looking at the advertising space. And I assume that that's driving more revenue for Zillow rather than just the original ad model. But that's something that in business we have to continually innovate, and it's not just Zillow, and it's not just your brokerage, but we all have to continually innovate. And one of the things that my team has been doing is looking at different approaches that we can take to our customers. And, how can we better serve our sellers? How can we better serve our buyers and really just be their go-to resource? Not just, I mentioned this 1031 buyer earlier, right? Most people would get that call and say, oh, yeah, great, come on in and I'll show you a few condos or a few houses or different investment properties. I'm thinking outside of the box, and how can I help him, period? Because with a 1031, he could wind up, doing a land deal. He could do a pad site. He could do triple net lease anywhere. It's not just here in New York. So we need to continually think about how can we serve these people really across the board. You guys have probably heard of Jason Abrams from Keller Williams. Jason, a couple of years ago, I was speaking to him when he was an agent. He used to serve the athletes who were being traded from one team to another. And he would hear from a buyer and say, I was just traded to, the Minnesota Timberwolves and I need to buy a house. So Jason would fly out there on a Wednesday. He would partner with a local agent. He would see, 10, 15 different properties. He would whittle them down to the top 3 to 5 and say, hey, great news, Lindsay. I've already seen the properties for you. I'm going to show you the top 5. Then he would take them out on a Friday. He would do second showings on a Saturday, and he'd write the offer. And he'd continually move around the country to try to continue to serve his different clients in different markets. And he was as close to I've ever heard of being all things to all people. So, I mean, these are just the things that we do to really service our clients.
I look back at our time at Zillow, and like getting a great handle on digital marketing was obviously one of the huge benefits and a huge driver in this business. I mean, I think we sold 800 homes last year, and 70% of them came from online leads. But I think maybe the bigger benefit was working in that company in early stages and watching how they did operational changes. Now, they didn't nail it every time, but they were very comfortable with, we're going to try this, and if it doesn't work, we'll go back to the drawing board, or we will refine it, or we'll optimize it once we see the kind of early signs of success. And that's how we treat things here. I mean, it is a never-ending flow of not just new shiny stuff, but stuff that we think will really benefit an agent, and then constant refinement of those things in kind of an iterative process that I think is really what has driven every door to where it is today.
We're sort of in the middle of one, or we've been in the middle of one for a couple of years that we haven't, well, we'll never be perfect, but that we haven't nailed yet. And that is, you've heard of Compass Concierge, which is a fine program, but it's more of a marketing piece than anything, right? Compass doesn't actually control the people that do the work. The money is lent out. You got to do credit checks, and there's interest on the money. But, we built our own sort of Compass Concierge called Turnkey. And Turnkey is a zero interest, free money. And then we built a home services company that we totally own. So
I'm sorry, Jason. What's the difference between Turnkey and the home services, or are they one and the same?
The difference is that we actually own the company. We're not selling the lead to a third party to find contractors to do the work. It's going directly to our own company that goes out there and does the work and manages it all on behalf of the agent. And there is no credit checks, and there is no interest on the money. So it's, truly free, and it's managed entirely on behalf of the agent.
Right.
Turnkey is the vehicle that sellers use to take our dollars and deploy them on their asset to make it more valuable or show better or appeal to more buyers. Every Door Home Services is the company that does the fulfillment of a lot of that work. And that's a fully licensed and bonded contracting team that can do anything from painting front doors and landscaping to, pretty extensive remodels in some cases. And so it's one's the vehicle and the other one is the actual service itself. That home services division also services clients that have closed with us. So all the buyers that we've done business with over the past several years now have a source that's trusted, that they can have already had experience with, that can come in and help them with home improvements as they see a need for those.
Yeah. So it's sort of a one-stop shop and a trusted resource, almost like a contracting service for the buyers, and then a pre-listing service for the sellers. And on that note, is there any limit as to what Turnkey might be comfortable with spending on a pre-listing?
Yeah, so it varies, right? We will do no questions asked as long as you have equity in your home up to $25,000. When it gets over that bar, we record a deed of trust against the property just to protect those funds. We have not had an issue with collecting those funds at closing to date. We've done projects as big as $160,000 is probably where the biggest one topped out. And again, that was no interest, no credit check. We did have a deed of trust in place at that point just to make sure that we were paid upon close, simply because the sum of money was to the size that it was. Turnkey as a product has turned over probably almost $1.5 million at this point in every door funding improvements to a seller's house so that they get the most money in the least amount of time for their property. And it's it's been very successful, but it takes constant refinement to make it that much better of a service, not only for sellers, but also for our brokers here.
Sure.
The value to the broker is, hey, when you get the question of, I need to paint my house and landscape, and we need to swap appliances, how are we going to accomplish that? The broker has an answer for that, rather than, okay, I'll go have to solve that. It's another one of those things that's not revenue producing, right? Wrangling a bunch of contractors to get that work done is a lot of time and effort. And I'd rather a broker spend that finding their next client or servicing that current seller than going and trying to undertake that themselves.
What's the greatest win that you can take away from the turnkey solution? I mean, is there one sort of deal that stands out?
I mean, we just had a great win a couple days ago by a younger broker that used it for the first time. He started at this brokerage maybe 8 months ago, and he had a seller, and they needed some work in that house, and their offer was about $425 before they did any work. They ended up selling it after they put about $20,000 in turnkey spend into the house for just over $500,000.
Wow. Yeah.
They don't all return like that, but that's a $60K delta to that seller for
for zero risk, zero out of pocket. Like, it's a no-brainer.
They had to go on market 3 weeks later than they would have otherwise.
Yeah.
I think most people would trade that little bit of extra time for the extra $60,000, all day long.
100%. Yeah.
And we'll give the money for anything, right? I mean, as well as I do that a home that's vacant and staged and looks beautiful is going to sell faster for more money than someone who's sitting in a house. You can't go in when you want. They got to clean up every time. It's just much more difficult to sell a home like that. So if you want to stay at an Airbnb and don't have money for staging, we'll lend you the money for all that.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And so are you paying the vendors directly, or are you saying, hey, Mr. Seller, this is going to cost you $30,000, and the contractors are going to, have an agreement between you and them. You pay them. We'll pay you to pay them.
We are the contractor.
Right.
So we control the entire process. So no, the real estate company pays them. They don't. I mean, they approve the estimate, right? So
Sure.
they know what they're spending. But other than that, they don't have to worry about it. They don't manage anything. They don't schedule anything. The agent doesn't do any of that. It's all done by the project manager at Every Door Home Services.
How many agents do you guys have working on your team now?
About 115.
Wow. And so are they all sort of out of one location, or do you have different locations?
We have one office. People's viewpoint on coming to the office is significantly different than it was in say, 2019.
Right.
We have folks that are here on a daily basis, and then we've got another subset of folks that are here about once a week or once a month. And we have folks that haven't been to the office in over a year. The brokerage is set up to provide support and service wherever you are, which is another kind of big benefit that we haven't talked about. We have a pretty extensive showing assistant program so that brokers can focus on things that make them money, right? Whether you can't be at two places at once, or you value going to your kid's birthday over showing this buyer, or your client isn't going to make it to the inspection, and so it would be better to have someone go and sit that inspection for you rather than you yourself being there, so that you can continue focusing on driving more business. That's another tool that our brokers have at their disposal from day one here. And its fulfillment is in darn near real time. If you need a door opened 30 miles south of where you are right this instant, more than likely you're going to find somebody in the next 5 minutes that can go and do that for you. So it's one of the other leverage services that Every Door provides our brokers, so that they can be in two places at once and get more business done in the same amount of time.
And for those agents that do more business, the company pays for all that. If they fall under that bar, then they can still use it. They just pay for it themselves.
So there's a threshold that the agents need to either get to or maintain in order to have the additional services that the brokerage provides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you had to take us back to the sort of first, say, 12, 18, 24 months of the brokerage. What were some mistakes that you made?
Quota.
Yes, probably one of our biggest mistakes in history was in instituting a quota. Jason and I are driven to help people. Like, yes, we got into real estate because there's a financial component to it that's attractive and exciting. But we really quickly learned that being a part of someone else's success is a way bigger driver of wanting to come in every day and make this place as great as it possibly can be. As a result of that, we want more for other folks sometimes than they want for themselves. And everyone's driven by different things and to different degrees. And we thought, okay, the way to get people really driven is to instill a quota at the company where you got to sell X on a quarterly basis. And it was a mistake. We had plenty of people that hit quota month in and month out, but they always were the people that would hit those kinds of sales numbers. It did not drive people that were not as motivated to suddenly get motivated. And it was one of those cases of us deciding that what I want for you is what you should have. And here's a reason to do it, because you won't work here any longer if you don't. And it was a huge mistake. We lost some brokers that were truly great folks from a service to client perspective and just culturally within the brokerage. The good news is that once we recognized what we had done and ended that, we were able to hire back 80 or 90% of the folks that were exited as a result of quota. So huge disaster, but one that we were able to mitigate pretty effectively.
So you learned and you were able to sort of pivot to more of a culture-based brokerage rather than a quota-based brokerage.
Yeah, you got it.
Great.
This is a sales org, right? I mean, we love sales. I love sales.
Yeah.
But not everybody likes sales as much as me.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, good guys, this has been great. Thanks for joining us on our little podcast series here, the Rubin Special. You guys are off to something really quite special there in Seattle, and it's clear based on your production, and that you're one of the top 50 teams in the country according to Real Trends, and the top team in the market that you service. So I see a lot of growth in your future, and really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your story with us.
We appreciate being on, Josh. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Lindsay.
Hi, it's Josh Rubin with the Rubin team.